It was just another one of my business trips, cutting through the Australian outback. Although I'd made the drive countless times, the vast, desolate landscapes had never failed to both fascinate and intimidate me. The long stretches of road, the eerie silence, the glowing eyes of the nocturnal creatures reflecting off my headlights. It was the kind of experience that both intrigued and unnerved me at times. This particular evening, I was surrounded by the suffocating black of night, clouds covering the usual bright stars. The only source of light was the piercing beams of my Land Cruiser's headlights, darting off the occasional animal's eyes. Around 3 hours into my journey, the CB radio began to fizzle and distort with an unsettling static. I reached out to adjust the dial when something on the road caught my eye, a figure. Standing in the middle of the dirt road was a man, waving, clothes dirty, hair disheveled. I braked hard, narrowly avoiding hitting him. As my Toyota skidded to a halt, the man's eyes met mine. They seemed to shift colours, though I didn't think much at the time. Swallowing hard, I lowered my window just a crack. "Mate, you alright?" No response. He just stood there pointing to an old car parked in the ditch. My instincts screamed at me to drive, to head away, but I couldn't abandon a soul in the middle of nowhere thinking his car was broken down. What if he needed help? "Do you need a ride?" I hesitated for a moment. Again, nothing, just an awry smile. Deciding to go with my gut, I unlocked the passenger door. After what seemed like an eternity, the man finally shuffled over and clambered in, his movements stiff and mechanical. For ages, we drove in silence, the only sound being the hum of the engine and the occasional crunching beneath the tires as the road changed from dirt to gravel. The radio remained static, almost as if it were responding to his presence. I tried striking up a conversation to break the tension. "So, what's your story, mate? What's a bloke like you doing out here?" Again, no reply. But this time, he turned to look at me, those lifeless eyes seeming to pierce right through my soul. Feeling a sudden chill, I focused on the road ahead, praying I'd soon find a town or station to drop him off. A sign loomed ahead, partially obscured by the darkness. Kuba Pedi, 50 Ks. Relief washed over me. I'd drop him there and continue my journey. But as we neared the sign, my four-wheel drive headlights dimmed, and the engine sputtered before dying completely. Panic surged through me. Of all the times for my car to break down, why now? I reached for my phone, but no signal. "Just my bloody luck," I murmured, hoping that maybe this stranger had some mechanical knowledge. "Looks like a bad night for cars," I said, trying to break the ensuing anxiety. He turned to me for the first time, speaking in a raspy, almost ethereal voice. "They demand justice." Baffled, I responded. "What are you talking about?" "They demand justice," he repeated with a more sinister tone. Feeling a mix of anger and terror, I pushed the door open and stepped out, desperate for fresh air and a chance to think. But the surroundings had changed. The road, once a familiar landmark, now completely gone. Confusion set in hard. The sounds of shrieking and what sounded like eerie didgeridoos echoed through the air. Horrified, I turned to run away into unfamiliar territory, not knowing what direction to go, just trying to make distance between me and the impending danger. I could hear the shrieking and sounds trailing off. It was clear and safe, but I wasn't. Suddenly, hands gripped me, pulling me towards the sounds and shrieks. I saw their faces, with evil intent in their shifting eyes. My heart raced. I tried to pull away, but their grip was too strong, too unyielding. "The land demands a sacrifice," one of their voices whispered. I looked to him. It was the man I had picked up. As they chanted louder, the ground beneath me began to almost shake. In the not-so-distance, I saw a fire lit, and a pole near it, with a circle of chanting men surrounding the fire, dressed in white. I was being dragged closer and closer, screaming, fighting. I finally broke free. The last thing I remembered was running into the dark scrub and tripping over and trying to crawl away, then blacked out. When I opened my eyes, I expected to see these men. However, all I saw from where I lay was the first light of dawn, and my Land Cruiser parked. I ran to it. Had it all been a dream, a hallucination? I had no answers. But one thing was clear, the outback held secrets and stories that were beyond my understanding. As I drove away, leaving behind the mysterious strangers and their haunting experience, I made a silent promise to never return. To this day, I haven't set foot in the outback at night, and I probably never will.
The vast deserts of Nevada have always held an eerie charm, especially at night. Moonlit landscapes stretched out for miles, barely any other soul in sight. I had grown accustomed to the desolation, but I was never truly fond of night drives. Unfortunately, the demands of my job often had me traversing these empty stretches during the witching hours. On one such drive, with the weight of exhaustion bearing down on me, the road and my car felt like the only tangible things in an ever-consuming darkness. I remember thinking how the vast nothingness seemed to swallow everything whole. Then, unexpectedly, a silhouette came into view. Amidst the obsidian backdrop of the night, I saw her, a young woman with her thumb outstretched waiting for a ride. My instincts immediately screamed danger, for who in their right mind would be out here at this hour? But as I neared her, there was an unmistakable vulnerability in her stance, a sadness that tugged at my heartstrings. Against my better judgment, I pulled over. She climbed in swiftly, her face obscured by the shadows of her hood. "Thank you," her voice whispered, frail and almost ethereal, like a wisp of wind on a cold night. Her gratitude felt genuine, but there was a weight to it, a depth of emotion that made my skin prickle. "Where can I drop you off?" I inquired, trying to sound casual and hoping my voice didn't betray the unease I felt. "Just ahead," she replied, her voice barely audible. "There's a turn that leads to a house. I'll guide you." Although the atmosphere inside the car was thick with silence, I felt compelled to keep driving. We were alone together in this moving bubble, surrounded by nothingness. But as mile after mile passed, she gave no indication of our nearing destination. I began to question the wisdom of my decision. Suddenly, a chill snaked its way around my spine, the kind that raises goosebumps and causes hair to stand on end. The once steady dashboard lights flickered wildly. In a bizarre twist, my radio, which I distinctly remember turning off, sprang to life. It cycled through channels until it landed on a news bulletin, clear but noticeably dated. The announcement detailed a tragic event on this very highway, where a young woman had been found dead. Her description eerily mirrored my passengers. "That's where." Hair-haunting voice broke the stillness, pointing towards a decrepit old house that looked as if it had been abandoned for ages. Startled, I stomped on the brakes, gravel crunching beneath the tears. As the dust settled, she got out of the car and turned towards me. The dim glow of the moonlight unveiled her face, pallid and serene, eyes that seemed to capture centuries of sadness. My breath caught. This was the face from the news bulletin, the girl who'd met a tragic end. As if sensing my realization, she whispered, "Thank you," her voice trembling with an emotion I couldn't decipher, relief, maybe, or sadness. In the next heartbeat, she vanished, leaving behind nothing but the chilling emptiness of the desert night. Gasping for breath, my instincts took over. I pushed the accelerator and sped away from that haunting place, not daring to glance in the rearview mirror. The rest of my journey was a blur, each mile heavy with the weight of what I had just experienced. The next morning, I mustered the courage to ask some locals about the old house. Eyes widened, they recounted the tale of a girl who, even in death, sought rides back to her childhood home. Some called her a spirit, others a reminder of the town's tragic past, but all agreed on one thing. She just wanted to be remembered, to feel alive once more. Now, when I drive through that stretch, I can't help but feel a kinship with Alex, the phantom hitchhiker. Not out of fear, but out of respect, for the life she lost and the memories she desperately holds on to.
Driving at night has always had a hypnotic effect on me. The hum of the engine, the play of headlights on the asphalt, the occasional sweep of other car lights in the distance. But what happened to me on that cold winter night will forever make me wary of the open road after dark. I had just landed a new job in a town several hours away. My possessions were packed into the back of my SUV, and I was on the road, eager to start my new life. I decided to take a less traveled route, thinking it would offer some tranquility and save me time. Night fell as I was on the winding back roads, surrounded by forests and old farmhouses, their windows dark and lifeless. The monotony of the road, combined with the long day, made my eyelids heavy. I blinked, trying to focus on the task at hand. As I rounded a bend, I was jolted awake by an unexpected sight. A woman standing in the middle of the road, wearing a white tattered. She had long dark hair covering her face and was waving her arms as if signaling for help. Startled, I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching in protest. My heart raced as I stopped mere inches away from her. Before I could react, she approached my window, her face still obscured by hair. "Help me," she whispered, her voice filled with desperation. With my heart in my throat, I unlocked the doors, pushing logic aside. She opened the passenger door, settled in, and then silence. The cold winter air had invaded the car with her entry. "Where do you need to go?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Home," she murmured. "Just drive." Her response was strange, but I felt an undeniable urge to help. With the road ahead cleared, I pressed on the gas, stealing glances at her as we drove. Her entire demeanor seemed otherworldly. As the journey continued, she started humming a melody, a melancholic tune. I was drawn into its hypnotic rhythm, snapping to... I almost shouted, "Who are you?" With a maniacal movement. "Someone lost. Someone who has done terrible things," she whispered, her voice trailing off. I wanted to ask more but hesitated, fearing her answers. My GPS showed a town approaching, and with relief, I thought of dropping her off there. But as we neared, she became visibly distressed, almost angered. "Don't stop. Keep driving." So I did. Fear and obligation driving me. Time seemed to warp. How long had we been on this road? An hour? 2? Every time I tried to look at the clock, my eyes were drawn back to the road, the woman's humming filling my ears, leading me deeper into a trance. Suddenly, she stopped humming. "Here," she said, pointing to an overgrown path that led into the woods. "This is the way." I can't explain why I listened, but I turned onto the path, the underbrush scratching against the car. The woods grew darker, denser, as the path narrowed. I began to doubt my decision, but there was no way to turn around now. Finally, we arrived at a clearing where the remnants of a burnt-out, ancient-looking house stood. The woman gestured towards it. Confusion welled up in me. "Who are you? What is this place?" She turned to face me, and for the first time I saw her eyes. Hollow, empty sockets, a void of despair. "I am Emily." Out of instinct. I shut my eyes, and when I opened them, she was gone. The gravity of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. Had I just picked up a spirit, or was she real and needing help? Stunned and perplexed, I backed up the car, turning it around and speeding out of the clearing. The dense forest seemed to press in on me from all sides, but I didn't care. I just needed to get out. Finally, I reached the main road, breathing a sigh of relief. But as I drove on, I realized the car was freezing cold. My breath formed visible puffs in the air. Then, in the rearview mirror, I saw her. Emily, sitting in the back seat, eyes hollow, looking straight at me. "I dropped you off. What are you doing here?" I screamed, swerving the car. She didn't respond, just stared at me, her presence colder than the night outside. Panicking, I did the only thing that came to mind. I screeched to a halt, jumping out of the SUV and running to a nearby house. Banging on the door frantically, an old man finally answered, alarm evident on his face. Seeing my car and hearing my story, he whispered, "The girl, Emily? She's known around these parts. She died over a century ago in a house fire. Legend has it that she burned her own house down, killing her and her family. Every few years, someone claims to have seen her. Others have gone missing near that old house." Together, we approached the car, but it was empty. Emily was gone. Though I reached my destination safely that night, the encounter left an indelible mark